Hello and welcome to another edition of Council Watch, and this one centres around the Planning Committee. It's actually been a bit quiet, to be honest, since the last video. It wasn't quiet on social media, of course. Very clearly that the subject of toilets was a sort of touchy one, and on social media things were sort of a bit to and fro. Virtually everybody was saying the current situation in Lowestoft about toilets is grim, and there's been a bit of progress, and apparently the triangle toilets are actually built, fixed, ready to open, bar the grass roof. It's been held up for the grass. And that sort of has got a link to planning today, to be honest. What I'm talking about here is the fact that our council are tasked with managing the town, managing the things that they own, managing the things that they're sort of responsible for. And little things are leaking into the meetings. So we've got a requirement to be green. So somebody had the idea that, we need a toilet. But the most important thing isn't the ability for people to go and have a wee. It's that it's sustainable and green and ecologically sound. And those things are what holds up the vital requirement of a public loo, to be able to go in and have a wee. I think most people are quite happy with the concept of being green and ecologically sound. But really, in the case of a toilet, you want to go to the toilet. I mean, that is basically it. And the overriding factor should be the availability and openness and pleasantness, perhaps, of public loos. Although most of us, if you actually need to go, the dirtiness of a toilet sometimes is a secondary consideration. The fact that it's got grass on the roof might not even be on the drawing board as far as you're concerned when you're looking for a toilet. So the delay in opening the toilet because the grass isn't sorted is a bit feeble, to be honest. So that's what leaked into today's planning meeting. Now, as usual, Andy Pearce knows the rules. And I have to give him a bit of credit here, because in this meeting, he has to actually vote for and support planning applications that he personally doesn't like. And he's very clear about it. We cannot turn down a planning application for anything other than what's in the rules. And in most cases, the rules are pretty clear. And there's also a set of rules that sort of historically belong to Waveney, where they're things that we would like to happen in the local area. And if they're going to happen, we should support them because they're good. And if they contravene these local sort of plans that have been put into place, then we should reject them. And I think that's a pretty sound thing, because those plans were put into place and talked about, discussed and approved. And then we follow the plan. And he's sort of got a bit of a handle on that. Other people are, I think, well-meaning, but are trying to put into the planning rules things that just don't exist. I mean, perhaps being a bit controversial, we do have in Lowestoft people who we wouldn't be inviting around for Sunday lunch. I'm sure most people watching this know exactly what I mean. And in the past planning meetings, we've been looking at accommodation for people who don't have a home. I mean, we had a bit of a hoo-ha recently where some people wanted to actually open up premises and make them available at pretty cheap rates for people who are homeless, with some support, a laudable cause. I mean, I'm guessing that probably most of us wouldn't want to live next door, but that's not the point. The people who need that sort of accommodation have got to be looked after. And I guess the local authorities, small and big, are the people who are tasked with making sure that happens, not putting obstacles in the way. I mean, maybe even we should expect the local authority or Lowestoft Town Council to actually support this, even if it's against what the neighbours want. Now, the planning system actually copes for this. most people probably are aware, but maybe not everyone, that you can object to people who put planning applications in. And you don't have to live locally. It's perfectly possible for you to put a planning application in for some sort of project in the Lowestoft area and have somebody from Southwold object against it. Equally, if somebody wants to do something in Southwold, and we know sort of what Southwold's like, someone in Lowestoft can actually put a complaint in and say, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think we should have holiday lets in Southwold. We don't live in Southwold, but we can say that if we want. And then the planning authority, which in this case is East Suffolk Council, will look at the complaints they've had in and weigh them up. Now, it does mean that people will complain about things and have their views put to one side. There's a sort of greater good system that works. And we've had a bit of that in the council today. Mental health was brought up 3 times, I think, in the meeting as something that we should be wary of when granting planning permission. And while I certainly don't dismiss the problems of mental health, it's got nothing to do with planning whatsoever. You know, if someone hasn't got a home at all and is homeless, then getting any accommodation to save you being out in the rain and the cold has got to be good. And that's a positive thing for mental health. But we're looking at sort of complaints about, if we stick 16 people in a house, if we stick 8 people in a house, all these sort of things, then we're sort of getting a bit knotted up. Mental health can be positive, as in getting a home. Even a rotten home is better than no home. So I think the mental health thing is being played with the wrong set of cards here. Sure, I mean, there will be unscrupulous landlords who find an empty building, do it up to the bare minimum they can manage, charge people a fortune and make a few quid. Making a few quid is not actually a crime. Meeting standards is important, and not meeting them probably means you won't get the planning permission anyway. But realistically, if people meet the planning rules and want to make a few quid by charging people for accommodation, it's perfectly legal, and really we shouldn't be trying to stop it, because there is a net good. People have a home. Now, this all got a bit sort of ratty in today's meeting, but it was all right. I mean, people have, want to make their point. Wendy, of course, bless her, I hadn't got a clue what was going on half the time. It does make me wonder if she's actually able to understand plans at all, because at the start of the meeting, I bashed up on my other computer the local East Suffolk County planning portal, went in, and I was looking at all the pictures that applicants have submitted. And they're all very straightforward. It's quite funny when you actually see a picture on the screen and you look at it and Wendy's saying, well, I don't know what's happening here. She gets a bit confused, bless her. And then she makes that awful waffling noise and sort of, anyway, let's have a look at some of the bits in the meeting.
We're rattling through this, Wendy, and you're back for 104 Corton Road. And the one I noted was the response by the Environment Agency. We're talking about the ground gas, and therefore they have a recommendation if it goes forward. Wendy?
They frequently talk about that on Corton Road. That's it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I know there was another application fairly recently, and it was a similar sort of response. I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm a bit lost.
She's a bit lost. Yeah, okay. Many people won't know this, but you know all those posh houses along the seafront? Well, in times gone by, that was the town rubbish dump in front of them. So for many years, the North Deans area was actually a landfill site. Well, of course, the thing is, there's all sorts of nasty stuff in the ground there. It's all grassed over now, of course, but, in years gone by, who knows what was there. In actual fact, if you look on the East Suffolk website, they actually don't know what's in it. They have no idea at all.
It's because of the proximity within 250 metres, I think, of the previous landfill.
But as I said, it's almost, you know.
It may well be common, but it doesn't mean to say that it's not valid.
True.
Andy hits on the idea. Okay, just make sure that in our recommendation to approve it, we make sure that the people are aware of the potential problem. Perfectly sensible suggestion.
I would recommend approval cautiously, subject to the fact that this report is addressing something that might be found, and therefore that they do draw that to the attention of the applicant and consider seeking a ground gas investigation before development commences. And that'd be my proposal.
Seconded. Any other comments?
I'm just checking the trees.
All in favour? Okay, done.
Now we move on to some of the more contentious stuff. Homes of multiple occupancy. The first one they're talking about is in Milton Road. And as I said, everybody is allowed to put in their own comment, usually a complaint. It's very rarely a support. And in this one, the person who actually raised the complaint actually has said it will devalue their property. Now, I think most of us can sort of understand that one, but Andy points out how that works.
The one thing I will say on the objectors' comments is, there's comments about devaluing property, and I've noted that's not a material planning consideration, so we couldn't take that into account, however we feel about it.
They're not structurally changing the house.
No.
Basically, it's just saying who's going to live there.
Yeah.
That's what they're objecting to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're saying about, particularly if they have friends round and have a family house, they're going to buy.
Come on, friend.
Oh my God. Having friends
okay.
round in the garden,
So-
how dare they?
Wendy's proposed it. Do we have any other? Do we have a seconder? Or
I kind of agree. I'm just looking because I knew the one in St Peter's Street was student accommodation. I just wanted to make sure this one was, because I agree with Wendy's comments in the round on because we all know that accommodation for students attending courses is quite a problem.
Christian has seconded it. Seconded it. Any other comments? All in favour? Okay.
And now another conversion, in this case, offices into an HMO.
Change from offices to a 9-bedroom HMO. Andy.
So again, I've just written down, application is in a conservation area. WLP 8.4 allows for conversion to fully self-contained flats, except in prescribed streets where the 20% flat saturation threshold has already been exceeded. But HMOs are not self-contained flats. WLP 8.4 states that conversion to HMOs would only be considered where exceptional circumstances are demonstrated. It is difficult to see from this application that exceptional circumstances have been demonstrated, and consequently, therefore, I recommend refusal on the basis that it would be contrary to the Waveney Local Plan 8.4.
Andy's actually saying that there is a policy on this that exists, and HMOs in this particular area can only be approved if some kind of exceptional circumstances exist, and he's worked out that they don't, and that's how the system works.
I just echo my concerns about HMOs in that there's so little space and outside space for people, and whatever people say, if we're concerned about a future health crisis, that has to include mental health, and sticking people in these type of buildings and conditions is no good for their mental health.
You see, that's actually true, but it's got nothing to do whatsoever with planning.
A detail is there's a removal of car parking. The assumption is that people in a HMO are never going to have a car.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit insulting.
Yeah.
But it's part of the package. Wendy.
If Christian hasn't, I'll second Andy's proposal. I second it. Did you propose? Did you second it?
I didn't say.
I second it.
You're seconding rejection.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can we vote on?
Can I just make a comment?
Sorry, Bernie.
Sorry, I'm just trying to unload the document, because sometimes they take a while, but I think this one is for, just as a comment, I'm not saying it changes anything. It's quite a lengthy document if it's
Yes.
the one I'm thinking of, and it said that this is for student accommodation rather than. So I just thought I'd mention it in case someone comes
I
back.
don't think it really matters who's living there.
Well,
It's sort of.
My point about the car, when I turned up as a student in Lowestoft a long time ago, I had a car. It was not a very good car, but it sort of went occasionally.
What we've drifted into is the fact that this particular conversion is mainly for students who go to the college in Lowestoft. So I suppose that's slightly different from people who are homeless and stuff like that. Then we went on to cars.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
just because
No,
we've just
yeah,
recommended one,
yeah,
because it was
yeah.
student accommodation and we need it, I thought I would just point out that this is also, it's also student
The
accommodation in case there's any.
Yeah.
But I think the distinction in my proposal is that this is in a conservation area and WO 8.4 relates to HMOs in conservation areas.
And that is, and it's also suggested that it's not, the documentation supports the proposal that you've made and has been seconded. Do we need further comment or should we vote
I
on
just
it?
wanted to come back to Bernie. The difference between this application and the Milton Road one is the quality of the design and the outside space.
Okay.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Wendy,
So
but
that's in-
because we've had the applicant here before and he's come back,
Yeah.
I just wanted to raise.
Oh,
the
right.
point
Oh, it's the
that-
same one. Is it the same applicant?
Yeah, I was trying to download, but yes, he had one in.
He's branching out, isn't he?
So I just thought I would mention that so that we've made note of it for this
Occasion.
application. I know it doesn't change the circumstances, but I just wanted to make you aware.
Well thought, good forward thinking.
But can I be clear, because I made the proposal, I'm not distinguishing them on design and quality grounds because they could be argued to be subjective. I'm distinguishing that one's in a conservation area, one isn't,
Yes.
and I'm referencing the Waveney local plan in this application. I haven't referenced anything else. Whilst I do agree generally with Christian's comments, the recommendation, the rationale for my recommendation is WO 8.4.
Not meeting criteria. Thank you. It's been proposed seconded. All in favour of rejection? Thank you.
And Andy brought it back onto track. It's not being rejected because of the quality or the cost or anything like that. It's being rejected because it's in a conservation area and it doesn't meet the existing plans. I've got no idea where Wendy gets all this stuff from. Then we moved on to another conversion into an HMO. And again, Andy had to jump in.
So I was, my gut feeling was I was wary when I was read it, but I don't have anything that I could seize on to actually to object to it as a material planning consideration, other than the point Christian made about the proliferation of HMOs in general and the effect on people's quality of life and consequently mental health. But then if we take that with one, we should be taking it with all of them.
I found it very difficult to follow it when I was reading it, but that doesn't add much one way or the other. Do we have a proposal? Andy?
Well, it's a reluctant proposal on the basis that I can't find any material planning consideration to object. I therefore recommend that we have to give them benefit of the doubt and recommend approval. I don't like it, but I don't have to like it.
That was the way I was lining up myself. I'll second your proposal.
Can I just chip in very quickly? There's no livings. There's 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. I can't see any kitchen. Oh, there is a kitchen. The ground floor could be a retail space with its own WC and kitchen. To rear be 1 bedroom, laundry room, kitchen, and dining room. I don't know, it just seems. I'm going to abstain on it.
Okay, we've had a proposal seconded. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? 3 abstentions.
It's carried on the basis that there's none against.
Now that's odd, isn't it? So the recommendation was to approve, and as Andy said, because there are no proper reasons to reject it. But the other people in the room didn't agree, so they just decided to abstain. I think Wendy was just confused because she couldn't really read the plan and work out where the actual accommodation was inside. And she really needs to get to grips with plans, because it is a planning committee, and if you can't read a plan and you just like fizzle out and go, what's the point of being on the committee?
Crown House Street. This is change of use to an 18-bed HMO subdivided in 5 separate units, each containing separate kitchen and bathroom facilities. Wendy.
My reservations about this remain exactly the same as when I didn't vote for it last time. It's far too many. It's an overdevelopment in an area that seems to be having an increasing number of HMOs, and there are just not the facilities or infrastructure in the area. We have Lowestoft. I've written it down somewhere, but Lowestoft is recognised as being an area of deprivation with mental health issues and employment issues and all sorts of issues like that. The proliferation of these kinds of places is going to do nothing to address any of those issues. There's one on the end of Alexander Road, we've got one in Milton Road, another one somewhere else, and no doubt be more in the High Street. And yet we don't have the doctors, the dentists, we don't have anything to support these people. An 18-bed HMO, it's just too big. It's an overdevelopment, and also it does nothing to address the other issues, the issues of mental health and well-being and regeneration, because I think it's geared towards people who probably are never going to work.
People who are never going to work. Well, at least your cards are on the table, Wendy.
Thank you. Andy.
Right. So we've had this discussion before, and we actually withdrew our objection of overdevelopment. So I don't like it, and I told the applicant when he came to visit I didn't like it. Personally, I would much rather it was used as community space as a whole, but we can't object to something because we'd rather it was used for something else.
As we've got a new chair, Andy then explained the history of this application and how it had all been gone through with the actual applicant in the room. So it carried on for a bit. So I'll trim that bit out and we'll jump back in as soon as we get to the interesting bit at the end.
Little change.
Yeah. So I think on the basis that that is the only material change from our previous application, then just as reluctantly, I recommend approval.
I would second what you're saying and the proposal, because we approved it last time. Nothing material has changed, so it would be illogical for us to go against what we previously said without there being some substantive difference against it. So I second it. All in favour? And against? 1 against, abstentions, and 1 abstention.
And then we moved on to another HMO. And in this particular application, quite a lot of people had written or emailed into East Suffolk with concerns. Some of the concerns were worded quite strongly, and this one isn't going too well.
Ordinary people in this town who are, it's an economically deprived town, but there are areas in this town that are particularly deprived. There are ordinary members of the public who are struggling to cope. If you put vulnerable people into that dynamic against the highly charged political dynamic, you know, that's been building up to the elections and since, I believe, I said it when we considered this application and the Milton Road previously, and I agree with this one, that there is a real risk, not so much of public disorder, but of safety to some of these individuals. I think there needs to be, I would like to ask, outside whatever recommendation we make on this application, because previously with the one at Milton Road, we asked for it to go to full committee and be allowed to make representation, and predictably we were just ignored. I would like to ask, could we ask the planning authority whether the reference has been made to the proliferation of HMOs and the safety concerns and the impact on a economically deprived area? Could we have a general Zoom call with the planning authority to discuss the concerns here and understand how they see it from a policy point of view and not from an individual application point of view? So whatever recommendation we would make, I would like to ask for that to go with it as a side request. But with this one, I don't believe that the original objections have been materially remedied, and therefore I recommend refusal.
Okay, thank you.
So it's quite an important thing to talk about. And then Wendy goes off on one.
I also, when I was looking at it, I noticed the concerns about the flooding risk, which are there. And I also feel, notwithstanding the decision, some of the comments border on or appear to be racist. And I think that's regrettable. I did see Bernie before I saw you. But
Sorry.
I had seen.
I think I had my hand up first. You went to Andy. Now you're going to Bernie
No.
instead of me?
I saw Bernie's hand at the same time as I saw Andy's.
What?
You'll get your go, don't worry.
I had my hand up way before I told them.
Bernie.
Every meeting.
Once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also, I was going to say, I recommend that we, or I would support Andy, that we recommend refusal on this. All that's happened is they've removed one bedroom. They've done nothing to address any other concerns. East Suffolk Council also turned it down. So to me, it's just we'll remove a room and resubmit it. So I'm happy to second.
Okay, second.
Andy.
Wendy.
Well, first of all, I want to distance myself from comments that if we put asylum seekers somewhere in Lowestoft, they'd be beaten up. Because
I didn't say that one, did
it was suggested. My objection to this application is twofold. One is, it seems to me that it's squalid. It's basically taking people who have been through probably hell and God knows where else, and putting them into inadequate accommodation with very little outside space, very, very few facilities, and a landlord making a nice little profit out of it. Thank you very much. So it's just, I think it's what worries me about the proliferation that we're seeing of these applications is because Lowestoft's housing is relatively cheap compared to the rest of Suffolk. It's an opportunity. It's a bit like the care homes. It's an opportunity for certain types to kind of get on the bandwagon and exploit vulnerable people. But the main thing for me is a poor design and putting people in adequate conditions that will just add to mental health conditions in the town, which we don't have the infrastructure support already. It is very close to a flat saturation area. It's very close to a conservation area. What is the rest of East Suffolk doing? You know, like, when will we see an application like this for Southwold or Raydon or somewhere else? Like, it's where is the policy thinking about how best to help vulnerable people?
Okay.
It's just, there's no, I'll be voting against it.
Okay, thank you.
And the chair was a bit miffed by all that.
Before coming to you, Christian, I'll pick you up. nobody suggested that asylum seekers would be beaten up here, and I think it is inappropriate to invent words that have not been said. Christian.
I just echo sort of a lot of the comments that have been made already, but I have nothing against obviously the residents that are going to be put up here. But as mentioned before, I have grave concerns about big companies which seemingly profiteer off the poor and vulnerable in this situation. And it then becomes a hamster wheel of vulnerability where they just seem to be shoved in these places, and I'm dead against it. And pretty much the same what I said before about the mental health situation. And these are a Victorian, or I assume they're Victorian type houses, which just were not made for the kind of sort of small spaces for residents that people want.
Thank you. Andy?
Well, thank you for clarifying, Chair, because that's what I was going to say. I didn't say or suggest any such thing, and I would rather just other members concentrate on their own opinions and leave me to speak to mine. But what I said was that if you put vulnerable people into an area that's already economically deprived against the current political backdrop, you increase their vulnerability. Now, that might be, it could be hostile treatment. It could just be basically the same things we've been discussing, that there are local people already living there that are struggling to support themselves, let alone a new intake of people who will need extra support. It's a perfect storm. But I also feel that in this context, whilst the operator, we can't take the operator into account as a material planning consideration, I am concerned about exploitation too. So
we've had a proposal. Have we had it seconded? I think we have. Yes, okay. Can we vote to? We're voting in favour of rejecting. If that's not a
recommend refusing.
That's the word. That's the phrase. Thank you. And the proposal that Andy put with it was that we would seek consultation, discussion.
With the primary planning authority on the proliferation of HMOs in general, particularly the larger commercial HMOs, which goes to the point Wendy made about policy. It is policy and the concerns around policy that we would like to discuss rather than a specific application.
Now, Wendy could have actually shut up at that point, but no.
Wendy?
I just want to clarify what my comments that you took issue with and Andy took issue with. It was interpreted by members of the public last time we had this discussion that when you talk about vulnerable people and making them more vulnerable, it was interpreted in the way that I said, that somehow or other this would lead to that. Now, you might think you're being subtle and nice about it, which I'm saying how it's read. And I was just making it very, very clear. I'm not worried for these people because of the people of Lowestoft. I'm worried for these people because of the squalid conditions. And that's it. That's what the distinction I was making. No matter how deprived and needy Lowestoft people are, I don't think these people have anything to fear from them.
Thank you. Andy?
And once again, I didn't say they had anything to fear from them. So once again, you've misrepresented my comment. And if other people unnamed have interpreted any previous comments that have been made in any way, then they are quite free to write into this planning committee. They don't need another councillor to say how they've interpreted something. So if every member of this committee just sticks to representing their own views, it would probably be a lot more helpful.
Well, from then onwards, they moved into sort of talking about garage roof changes and things. So probably not particularly exciting to listen to, but just a bit snappy towards the end. But all in all, not a bad meeting, I suppose, and the subjects were a bit different from usual. I'll see you on the next video. Look after yourselves. Take care.